Hello everybody, welcome back to the MMA Girl channel. My name is Jess, the MMA Girl. Thank you very much for being here. Today we're going over UFC 319. This is my full reaction video. We've had the fights, I watched them on Saturday night, but we're going over all the fights that were extremely important to talk about and just looking to see what we thought of it. So let's do it. So this baby, this baby officially has a new owner and his name is Khamzat Chimaev and he's from Chechnya. And there's nothing we can do about it. DDP lost his belt this weekend, of course, at UFC 319. And whilst, of course, it was quite a long fight, 25 minutes of solid grappling for Khamzat Chimaev, DDP just didn't have what it takes to lock in and get out of there. And that's the problem that had happened during that fight. DDP underestimated his opponent. DDP overestimated his abilities to get out of that situation. He, of course, in the run-up to this fight, had been saying constantly, I want him to take me down. I know who'll take me down. I'm expecting him to take me down. But that's when I will be able to get out of that situation and tire him out. Didn't happen. But at least we got a fight that was worth 25 minutes, of course, because what can you do with someone who's not getting out of the situation he's in and someone who is just constantly taking him down and keeping him there? As his coach said, as Dricus' coach said, it was a blanket. He was a blanket on top of Dricus. So, of course, his coach said, I want him again, and I want him for the belt, and I don't want anyone else but in between. So, Dricus Du Plessis' coach does not want Dricus to be back in the bag full of UFC middleweight contenders, because he's not a contender. For Dricus' coach, he's still champion. His belt has been stolen from him, and he needs to get it back from Hamza Chimaev. And I think if they stay on the feet, Dricus may have a better chance to win against Chimaev, but the problem is staying on the feet is one thing, but staying the whole time on the feet is just impossible. In 30 seconds, he was on the ground after every bell rang for every single round. It was just impossible, and Dricus was not defending the takedowns correctly, so his takedown defense has probably gone down to the bottom of the scale, because how can you say you're good on the ground when you can't avoid being taken down, or at least get out of it as soon as possible? So basically, I think that Dricus Du Plessis, he took off a bit more than he could chew, but he was someone we respected for wanting Chimaev. No one else wanted to fight Chimaev. So congrats to Dricus Du Plessis for not getting subbed. And congrats, of course, to Hamza Chimaev, new middleweight champion. Well deserved. He will be the middleweight champ for a long time, unless someone comes in and is able to take away that power and is able to remove his abilities to take them down, or at least when taken down, get out of it, like Gilbert Burns did, like Kamaru Usman did. Those people that were able to switch positions, they were able to get out of situations that Khamzat puts them in. And that was why Gilbert Burns was able to wobble Khamzat, because he was able to stay on the feet long enough to piece them apart as much as possible before, of course, losing. So the moral of the story is Dricus Du Plessis needs to go back to work on his ground game. Even though he's a good grappler, he's not at the level that he needs to be to win his belt back for now. We, of course, had quite a few cancellations, even coming up to the fight day. We had, of course, Bobby Green, who pulled out 2 days before the fight, saying he was not able to get up. He was not in a good way, so unfortunately he wasn't able to compete, and that was quite a shame because people were excited for Bobby Green to be back. King Green was finally back after his KO loss against Mauricio Rufy, but unfortunately that wasn't going to happen. And then just before the fight started, of course, we had the weigh-ins on Friday, and Bryan Battle, now newly middleweight Bryan Battle, seemingly missed weight at middleweight. He was, of course, going to take on Ruziboev. That was going to be a nice way to start with the card. That was initially the first fight on the prelims card, and unfortunately Bryan Battle was not able to compete because he was over 5 pounds middleweight limit. He already, of course, moved up from welterweight to middleweight because he was missing weight every time practically. So now he's at middleweight. Who would have thought it? He managed to not make middleweight either. So unfortunately, Bryan Battle, he's not come out with the goods for the weigh-ins, and the fight between himself and Ruziboev was cancelled. I saw a video of both guys talking to each other. Bryan Battle, of course, apologised to Ruziboev, but Ruziboev was very upset that he wasn't able to compete on Saturday night at 319, which was going to be a huge opportunity for both guys at UFC 319, probably the biggest card of the year. So a huge missed opportunity for Brian Battle, unfortunately. So let's go over these prelims first and foremost. There were quite a few incredible moments during the prelim card. And of course, we had that so-called robbery that happened in the second prelim fight. So let's go over the first prelim fight, which was, of course, Albi Adiris versus Joseph Morales. Joseph Morales got the submission in the second round of that fight. Great fight, of course, to start off the card. Love kicking off the card with a finish because that sets the tone for the rest of the evening. And of course, after that, we got Karine Silva, who took on last minute Diane Barboza. Diane Barboza was not at all her original opponent. She was supposed to take on JG Aldrich, and unfortunately, JG Aldrich had to pull out. So Karine Silva then took on Diane Barboza, and she won via decision. Now, this fight, a lot of people were saying it was a robbery. When you look at the stats for this fight, you obviously understand better why the judges gave the win to Karine and not Barboza. Of course, Joe Rogan getting into the octagon to interview Karine Silva was not expecting to interview her because he thought initially, as many people did as they were booing, that Barboza had won that fight fair and square. But looking at the stats, in terms of total strikes, Barboza had less total strikes than Silva did. But the one thing that was important was the 2 submission attempts from Karine Silva versus the 1 only submission attempt from Barboza. I think that's what made the difference for the judges. I'm not sure. It was a very tight one. I think it could have gone either way. But a lot of people were saying, of course, Karine got the win from robbing it from Barboza. But that's, up to debate, if you like. But anyway, Karine Silva, of course, got the win. Then, of course, Edson Barboza lost his fight against Klose via decision as well. Slow start to the card. Then we got on to the main prelims card, because that was, of course, the early prelims card. Unfortunately for Chase Hooper got KO'd in the first round from Alexander Hernandez. When I saw Hernandez coming to the octagon, I was like, he's going to destroy Hooper. I wasn't expecting it, but I kind of felt that was going to happen. It was a nasty KO from Alexander Hernandez, a nasty TKO, but unfortunately for Chase Hooper, he was overpowered. It was a very, very short and sweet evening for him, but he'll be back, and I'm sure he'll be better the next time we see him in the octagon. Then we, of course, had Mirshaft, who took on the fighting nerd, Michal Olekchek, and he was incredible. I mean, what an incredible way to start off the card for the fighting nerds, of course, because we had Carlos Prates on the main card, so I think that even gave him more motivation to get the win over Geoff Neal, because, of course, he had a first fighting nerd on the prelims card who got the first round KO just over 3 minutes in the first round. So incredible KO for Michal. And I saw him coming out of the octagon. He gave a big hug to Caio Brado, who was, of course, in the arena because he weighed in as a backup fighter for Du Plessis versus Chimaev. So, of course, he was very happy to see one of his fellow fighting nerds winning. Michal Olekchek is not a day one fighting nerd. He recently joined the fighting nerds, and he has been working very hard with them, and it's showing. He's getting better and better, and I'm very happy for him and the fighting nerds to get their first win on the 319 card during the prelims. Then, of course, for the ESPN featured prelim on this card, we had the newly signed Basangor Susukayev, who is now 10-0, who is facing the newly signed Eric Nolan. Basingor, of course, he won via second round submission in the ESPN featured prelim fight. So this was a great way to start off the card. Obviously, Basingor, one of Chimaev's fellow friends, someone he trains with, someone who says, even Chimaev says he's better than him. So we are basically at the start of Basingor's UFC career, but apparently we're going to be seeing some major things from him in the middleweight division. But that was a great way to kick off the UFC 319 card. And we, of course, went straight in to the main card with Tim Elliott versus Kai Asakura. Now, this fight, as you might remember, I predicted that Tim Elliott would get the second round submission. And what did he get? He got the second round submission, and I'm so happy that I got that right. Tim Elliott, he's great on the ground. Kai Asakura takes him to the ground and then realizes, oh, Tim Elliott is really good. And he reverses positions, gets the choke. And I just was so happy for Tim Elliott. I can't believe it. He brought his family, of course, his wife. He was a very efficient guy on the ground and on the feet. He was giving Kai Asakura problems everywhere. And Kai Asakura, unfortunately, has now requested that Hunter Campbell let him go. And then he goes back to Ryzen. I shouldn't laugh about that, but I just think it's a shame to ask to go back to your old promotion when you've only had 2 fights at UFC. But I think he's realizing that he is not at UFC level, despite all the work he's been doing, despite how much of a big star he is at Ryzen, how much of a big name he is in MMA. It just isn't going to work out for Kai Asakura at the UFC. So that's why he's requesting that the UFC let him go, because he wants to go back to Ryzen. So bye, Kai. Congratulations to Tim Elliott for his amazing second round submission to start off and kick off this amazing main card. We then, of course, went on to having Jared Cannonier versus Michael Venom Page. I predicted that Michael Venom Page win this fight via decision, and he did. Of course, Michael Venom Page, he doesn't look for the finish. He doesn't look for that finish. He looks to piece away at his opponent. So he pieces his opponent apart, and then he gets the decision win. He got dominated towards the end of the third round, but it was too late for Jared to get the finish on Michael at that point. Michael was not going to let himself get finished when he was 2 rounds up. So even if he may have lost the third round, looking at the stats, first and second rounds, of course, were obviously Michael's. The third round, arguably, Jared Cannonier got that third round. But congratulations, of course, to Michael Venom Page. I predicted you win, and you did. What did you guys think of the MVP versus Jared Cannonier fight? Anyways, we then, of course, had Carlos Prates take on Geoff Neal, which was the start of the consecutive back-to-back spinning elbow. And that was amazing. Spinning back elbow in the most incredible fashion. Of course, we got the first elbow to the shoulder that foreshadowed the spinning elbow that he was going to knock him out with, and it was incredible to see Carlos Prates, of course, getting the first round finish on Geoff Neal, just over 4 minutes and just before the bell rang, which was incredible. I did not expect that. It made me think, of course, the Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway moment, where, of course, Max got the KO finish in the last second of the last round. This was, of course, the first round, so if he didn't get the finish, it would have gone to the second, and maybe he would have finished in the second. But getting the first round victory here, incredible. And Carlos Prates can be so happy for himself. Second fight on the card for the Fighting Nerds won. So a full sweep for this Fighting Nerds, of course. Congratulations to those guys. They must be very happy going home with a lot of impressive wins in the last few months. So very happy for Carlos Prates. Of course, Carlos Prates now called out Leon Edwards for a fight in October. So why not? I mean, why not at UFC Rio? Headlining, of course, we have Fiziev versus the King of Rio, Charles Dubonx Oliveira. And then, and as a co-main event, we have Carlos Prates versus Leon Edwards. That would be incredible. A lot of people were doubting that Geoff Neal would get knocked out, because it was, of course, the first time in UFC history that Geoff Neal has been knocked out. No other competitor has ever managed to knock out Geoff Neal. So a real feat for Carlos Prates. He can be happy that he got first round finish over someone who has never been finished like that. And, of course, the $50,000 bonus, which is incredible to see as well. Then, of course, we had the second flying back elbow from Lerone Murphy in the co-main event of the UFC 319 card between himself and the newcomer, Aaron Pico. Now, this made me feel so bad, because, of course, Aaron Pico came from Bellator and PFL. He was not having a great time in PFL when they made the transition from Bellator to PFL completely. He had an up and down career already, but he was looking to get back at the top level, at the highest level in MMA, and get signed to the UFC. On Embedded, we saw him with his father. His father's so cute, so adorable towards his son. Very proud to see his son officially in UFC gear. So this must have been so hard to deal with. Of course, as Lerone Murphy said, when you put that much pressure on a high-level, high-skilled MMA fighter like myself, you were going to pay the price for that. And that's exactly what happened. Aaron Pico putting on the pressure, he got the flying elbow. I mean, incredible. No one expected that. Everyone expected Lerone Murphy to get the decision over Aaron Pico. I personally did. The other half of the people were saying Aaron Pico was going to win, of course. But Aaron Pico, as did Apache Mix, as did Patricio Pitbull, when they get to the UFC, that's when they find out this is no joke. And no, Aaron Pico, this is no joke. He was saying he was going to be a real challenge for Alexander Volkanovski, because he saw this being a one and done. A lot of people saw him being this being a one and done. He was, of course, favourite with the betting odds, and saying, of course, that he was going to win this fight and get a fight against Alexander Volkanovski. Now, of course, who's looking at a title shot? Lerone Murphy. And Lerone Murphy would love to fight in December. Alexander, of course, called out Lerone Murphy just after UFC 319 concluded, saying, "Are you up for a fight in December? You and me for the featherweight belt." of course he's up for it. And of course, Lerone Murphy confirmed he would be down for a fight in December. He said it's perfect. He has time with the family, time to go back and work and prepare for this fight. So he is up for it. And Dana White then put his seal of approval down on a fight between Volkanovski and Lerone Murphy in December. This could mean that we get Ilia Topuria versus whoever he'll be taking on for his next title defense at lightweight. And then in the co-main, Volkanovski versus Lerone Murphy. And I reckon that Ilia Topuria will be taking on Justin Gaethje for first title defense at lightweight. That will be what happens in December, I think, if Justin Gaethje gets what he wants, which I think he will. Lerone Murphy versus Alexander Volkanovski sounds pretty sweet to me, and I would love to see that. Because, of course, Lerone Murphy also got the $50,000 bonus for his performance against Aaron Pico. And Aaron Pico, unfortunately, he must be recovering right now from his incredibly explosive knockout. They were not able to even get his mouth guard out of his mouth at the beginning when they were trying to get him to wake up, because his jaw was clenched closed. Apparently, it wasn't moving, and that's quite a concerning knockout because he's taken some knockouts in the past at Bellator, so he needs to be careful. He's been knocked out quite a few times already. He needs to rethink his game in order to not get knocked out again, because this could be really concerning for his health. But that's it. Welcome to the UFC, Aaron Pico, as people are saying. Poor thing. Hopefully, when he's back healthy in 3 months or more, then we will be able to see the real Aaron Pico for what he is, because Aaron Pico is a quality MMA fighter. He just unfortunately was put up against one of the best in his division at featherweight, Lerone Murphy. And now I hope people will see Lerone Murphy for what he is, which is a real serious competitor. And we may be seeing Lerone Murphy as featherweight champion end of the year. And I wouldn't be surprised at all. Lerone Murphy may squeeze a win over Alexander Volkanovski, and we may be seeing the title reign from Lerone Murphy start now. Now let's get into the main event. The main event that, of course, surprised none, but annoyed quite a few people. Of course, Dricus Du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev didn't go the way I thought it would, because, of course, I predicted that Dricus Du Plessis would get the win via TKO in the third or fourth. My thoughts were, and I think Dricus also thought this as well, that Hamza would still get tired around those third, fourth, fifth rounds and start lacking in power, and then he'd be able to take over and get the finish. And you could tell that Dricus was hoping that, because I feel like in the first and second and third rounds, he wasn't letting himself get taken down, but he was not doing much with it. He just wanted Hamza to get tired. So he was not moving much, just defending the submission. Congratulations to Dricus Du Plessis over 5 rounds to not get submitted by someone who has submitted so many people in the past so easily. However, if we'd have seen more work on the feet from Dricus and Chimaev, maybe Chimaev could have got knocked out, or at least wobbled, as he did against Gilbert Burns. But now this fight is really showing the quality of Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman, who both, of course, survived 5 rounds against Khamzat Chimaev, but they didn't have the same scorecard that Dricus Du Plessis had. And I think getting round to those championship rounds, of course, the 5th round, he got up and tried to control a little bit, but it was too late. It's too late to try and finish him. It was too late to get enough control time to overrun the 4 rounds that he had been dominated. Dricus Du Plessis' team, his coach, of course, and himself thought that over the 3 rounds that he was getting dominated, that Dricus would be able to tire Hamzat out by not getting submitted, and then he'd be able to control the fight from the 4th to the 5th. That did not happen, because the work that Chimaev has been doing in the lab with Kurt Cow, with Arman Sarukian, with everyone he's been working with, he's been upping his game. And as we said before this fight, he is 100% healthy right now. Dricus Du Plessis was going up against the best version of Chimaev that ever existed. And unfortunately, that went, of course, against Dricus's plan. His game plan was not planned out that way. His game plan was basically made for the old Khamzat Chimaev. The new Khamzat Chimaev is able to control you to the first to last round. No problem at all. He didn't look tired. He, of course, had a few bumps and bruises. So did Dricus. But unfortunately for Dricus Du Plessis, his game plan did not work. So hearing what Dricus Du Plessis' coach said, Dricus Du Plessis' coach said, listen, we didn't expect that to happen that way. We knew he'd take him down, but we didn't expect him to be a blanket like that over him and just not let go and stick to him like that. So apparently Dricus's camp are looking for blankets, looking for fighters who are similar to Hamza Chimaev to come in and train with Dricus Du Plessis so he can learn how to get out of those situations. And that's just how you're going to have to do it, because unfortunately, if Dricus has a rematch against Khamzat Chimaev, the way Hamza is right now and the way Dricus is right now, it will be exactly the same fight. So they need to go back to the drawing board and start working with bodies that are able to mimic Khamzat Chimaev's game plan in order for Dricus to train to get out of it. But in the meantime, we have a new champion. We have a new champion from Chechnya, and his name is Khamzat Chimaev, and he is the reigning, defending, undisputed middleweight champion of the world. And he is willing to come back in October, November, or December for a title fight to defend his belt for the first time. And the next person in line, of course, the question is who? The question is who, because we don't know yet. Because, of course, we have a fight on the 6th of September, the start of next month, in Paris between Caio Borralho, the fighting nerd we saw weigh in as backup fighter for UFC 2019. He is weighing back in less than a month for UFC Paris number 4. And we are seeing him take on the number 1 ranked middleweight contender of the world, Nassourdine Imavov. And, of course, Nassourdine Imavov wants that fight against Khamzat. And Caio Borralho, on the other hand, he said, I've already trained with Khamzat. I've already done a week or so of his camp one time, and I know what he's like. I know how to counter his system, because that's what they call it. It's his system. You can be good at grappling. That's one thing. But Khamzat's system, Khamzat's blueprint for his fights, Khamzat's game plan is just so intact and bulletproof that not a lot of people are able to get through that. Caio Borralho, on the other hand, thinks he can. We'll see, of course, if Caio Borralho beats Nassourdine Imavov on the 6th of September, he'll be able to see what it'll be like between himself and Khamzat Chimaev 25 minutes in an octagon if it lasts 25 minutes. Nassourdine and Chimaev have trained together quite a few times. And in France, Nassourdine Imavov has been cornered by Chimaev quite a few times and even been in the corner of other fighters' fights in other promotions with Nassourdine. They have a good working relationship already. And let's just say Nassourdine maybe knows Chimaev a bit better than even Caio Borralho claims to know him. So these two people in top contenders position seem to want a fight against Hamza much more now because they think they know what to expect. Now we've of course seen what he will do to the average Dricus Du Plessis. Then we know what to expect in a fight next time he's in the octagon. And I think it's because we've seen the best version of Khamzat Chimaev that we've seen someone like Dricus Du Plessis get ragdolled for 25 minutes. But I think we have to wait until Hamza decides to move up a weight class before we see anyone else become UFC Middleweight Champion. That's my personal opinion. What do you guys think? Do you think there is anyone that can beat him in the top 10 right now? Anthony Hernandez, of course, Fluffy was coming up in the conversation. He is a very good fighter. He just ragdolled Dolidze a week ago. But is Dolidze at the same level as Hamza? Obviously, the answer is no. And I think a lot of people are arguing that he's beaten some real big names, which is true, are just not taking into consideration how much of a leap the former opponents of Fluffy are compared to Khamzat Chimaev. Now we're in a whole different country here. Now in a whole different planet of fighting styles, fighting power, of skills, etc. Anthony Hernandez versus Khamzat Chimaev in the next coming months. Hamza said he wants to come back in October, November time. If Dricus does not want to come back until January, we'll see, of course, Dricus come back better than ever when we next see him. So I'll be doing a video on UFC Fight Night 257 in the middle of the week for you guys so I can tell you my picks. And we will be getting a podcast episode also from me. So keep updated with all of the things I'm going to be posting. And in the meantime, check out my social medias. I do TikToks every day. So just look out for my TikToks on TikTok, the MMA girl _ I am on there. So yeah, leave some comments down below. Let me know what you thought of UFC 319. Let me know what your favorite fights were, what your favorite moments were. And we'll see each other in a couple of days. Bye.